Lisa Berkeley, president of the Democratic Women of Monterey County, and I'm here on a pre-recorded interview with Chaps Poduri, who is running for City Council of Pacific Grove. And I'm here with my sister Dwmc board member, Margie Kay. And throughout this interview, Margie will be asking Chaps the questions, and I'll be responsible for timekeeping and recording. So welcome, Margie, and welcome, Chaps.
Hi there.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here. We're going to begin with Chaps Poduri introducing himself for 1 minute. Then I'll follow with 4 questions. We will conclude with the candidate providing us with his closing remarks. Chaps, please make your introductory remarks. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Chaps Poduri. I live in somewhat sunny but beautiful Pacific Grove with my 3 young children, my wife, as well as my mom. I'm a banker by profession. I work for Bank of America, and I also serve as a councilman for the city of Pacific Grove. Outside of these, for Bank of America Foundation, I'm a co-chair for charitable giving for the Tri-County market areas of Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz, as well as I'm a board member at the Monterey Bay Fisheries Trust. I became a citizen of the United States roughly 5 years ago, and I got elected roughly 4 years ago, and I look forward to answering your questions here.
Thank you. Please tell us what the top 3 most pressing issues are in your city and how you plan to address them. You have up to 5 minutes to respond.
Sure. To me, as I would say, some pressing issues for me are also related to how I came to the city and what my kind of representation at a council level also is. And by that I mean that there are a lot of young families moving into town, and that includes mine. We have moved to Pacific Grove in 2016, and really we're looking for places to go within town, whether that's recreation, whether that's restaurants, whether that's outdoor activities. And so one of the big topics for me is really making it equitable on all fronts, and thinking about not only our current generations, but also future generations. So that's a big topic for me, is really what can we do about our future generations. The other topic I would have is the housing initiatives. We're tasked, the city is tasked with what are known as regional housing allocation needs, and our 6th housing cycle element essentially has the city to come up with roughly 1,100 plus housing units within the town. And so that is a big undertaking that the city has to undertake. And it is a 2-part activity. It means that not only do we have to identify, actually a 3-part activity, not only do we have to identify housing sites, but we have to zone those housing sites and then make sure that there are developers coming there to build housing. And that's housing for all, not just a certain section of the population, et cetera. So it's housing across all types of folks that want to live in town. So that is a big undertaking, and I hope to continue with that undertaking as we move along. And then thirdly, I do think that in order for the city to really thrive, we need to ensure that the city does produce a consistent revenue stream all along. And so there are several, I would say, initiatives that are in progress. We have for example, we have the Kimpton coming up with a hotel in town. We have the ATC project, which is also something that will bring in revenue into town. All of these will actually help the town to actually provide more activities, help build infrastructure that is, I would say, in some sense, crumbling in town. And it'll make sure that we're actually dedicating the right amount of money to the right amount of sources to ensure that the quality of life for the citizens improve on a whole.
Thank you. The next question is on housing. The California Democratic Platform supports, and I quote, allowing local communities to create strong tenant and affordability protections without the conflict of state law. What are your thoughts on this? And you have up to 3 minutes to respond.
Yeah, and so I would say California in particular, housing is a very big topic. And that's because the housing prices have shot up across the board on all fronts. And it is really, really difficult for anyone to find housing in any part of California, and especially so in a coastal area like Pacific Grove. And the other fact of the matter is we do not have enough housing for rent either. So so the rent prices are also being driven up accordingly. So to me, like anything and everything that we can do to help ensure that we're bringing some stability into this market, we're ensuring that the newcomers that want to have housing or desire housing is going to be instrumental to push the needle here. And what I have noticed is that unless we take some hard stances to actually build housing, like the housing initiatives, things are not going to move across. So we need to, as a community, we need to identify what all spots in town allow us to create this housing, whether that's through state policies or local policies, et cetera, is immaterial, because we do need to look at it with a lens for what we need to do for the future, for our future constituents, and act accordingly.
Thank you. The next question is on climate change. What are the main threats from climate change in your city, and how will you address them? You have up to 3 minutes to respond.
Yeah, I would say there's a few things that are on climate change that I would like to highlight. One is climate change is not going to, Pacific Grove is sandwiched between Monterey and Carmel, and it's a tourist town. And what that means is you will have traffic, and the climate factor that affects any of our nearby cities is going to affect Pacific Grove too. So we're not going to be, there's nothing exclusive to Pacific Grove that other cities will not face, especially on the coastal area. With that being said, the primary aspects that Pacific Grove does not have today is actually a climate action plan. And we have a climate action and adaptation plan committee that is working towards that effort. I'm actually part of that committee. And we also need to put our thoughts around, when we talk about plans, how much of those are in effect today versus the future. So there's an adaptation element. And so what I would like to do is to essentially put the wheels in motion as soon as we can to address climate related elements right now, versus thinking in terms of a plan and only taking systematic steps there. And by that I mean that we need to do everything in parallel, because even though we have a goal saying by 2040 or 2035 we need to be compliant with certain aspects, we cannot wait until that future goal to take those steps. Some of these steps need to be taken right away. And so I'm taking some initiatives on that front. And one of the initiatives I do believe is anything that we can do to look at our current infrastructure and address that infrastructure in place that can make it better from a climate aspect will help the equation. So one of the things that we are improving in town is what is known as a 5-way intersection. That 5-way intersection currently has, apart from the safety element, has stop signs all around. And the proposed I would say solution for that 5-way intersection is actually a roundabout. And that assists with lesser GHG, for instance. It assists with making traffic flow more smoothly and so on. So all in all, to say that there are elements in play currently, and there are elements that are going to be in play in the future. And I want us to tackle both those elements together.
Thank you. The next question pertains to women and racial rights, or the significance of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Is there a gender and/or racial gap on your commissions, committees, and boards in your city? If so, how will you address this? And you have up to 3 minutes to respond.
Look, I can tell you that, first of all, I think I should start here, which is Pacific Grove is, at least I would say, somewhat unique in that we do have a commission called the Task Force for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in town. And that comprises a diverse set of individuals that are looking at aspects from a DEI lens. And so I'm a liaison for the task force for DEI. And what has struck me really during my 4 years here is that the reason why the task force exists is exactly that, which is we need to hear from folks that are being discriminated. We need to hear from folks whose voices are not being heard, and we need to address those to make sure that Pacific Grove is a welcoming community for one and for all. So with that being said, to your question around whether we do have a diverse set of individuals across the board, I think we can certainly make market improvements to get there. But at this moment in time, we have this task force, and the rest of the board members, rest of the commissioners, and I would say city staff, we are undertaking activities to essentially review items to see how we can make that happen. And by that, I mean, one of the recommendations that has come in from this task force is really hiring a DEI consultant to examine items such as these to see how we can make them better. And I view this as an exercise to not only improve our town, but also improve it more holistically. So Pacific Grove, for example, does contract with vendors to provide services. And how can we essentially put clauses in there to say, when we contract with vendors, are the vendors doing the right thing too, with respect to DEI? So we have a way to improve not only our community, but technically the holistically the entire all the organizations that we work with, and we're taking steps towards that effort.
Thank you. We will now end with your closing statement. What would you like our listeners and viewers to take away about you and your candidacy? You have up to 1 minute.
I would say so. I guess I can't say I'm a newcomer anymore, but the last 4 years with the city have really been enlightening in many aspects to me, both at a political level as well as at a personal level. And effectively, what I've learned is that in order to make change, one has to really commit for the long run. And that's exactly the reason why I have decided to run for office again, and in fact, why I'm here. The second thing is I do value the mission statement and the objectives that the DWMC brings in here. They resonate with me. And fundamentally, I've always viewed things to be equitable across the board for everyone. So that has been a fundamental aspect of my life. And I'm hoping that with this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Margie and Chaps, for being here. I appreciate both of your time and think that concludes our time together. And thank you very much and best of luck in your candidacy, Chaps.
Sure. I appreciate you guys taking the time I know it's a process, so I appreciate you. I'm
Lisa Berkeley. I'm president of the Democratic Women of Monterey County. I'm here on a pre-recorded interview with Tina Rao, who is running for city council for the city of Pacific Grove, and my sister DWMC board member, Margie Kay. Throughout this interview, I will be keeping time and doing the recording, and Margie will be conducting the interview. With that said, I'd like to say welcome, Margie, and welcome, Tina.
Thank you. And thank you very much for setting this up. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here. We're going to begin with Tina Rao introducing herself for 1 minute. Then I'll follow with 4 questions. We will conclude with Tina providing us with her closing remarks. Tina, please make your introductory remarks, and you have up to 1 minute.
Thank you. I'll try and make this brief. My name is Tina Rao. I live in Pacific Grove. We've lived here for about almost 8 years. We moved here 8 years ago, and I started to get involved in the community. I ran for city council in 2022. I lost by 52 votes, which highly motivated me to run again. I was telling someone last night that I updated my website. I went to update my website from 2022 and nothing had changed. And that really made me stop and think about, how do we make progress in this town instead of just staying in neutral? We need infrastructure, we need housing, and we need people that can take that to the community and explain to them why it's so important that we do it. Not because the state's mandating it, but because it's the right thing to do. So I thank you for your time, and I look forward to the rest of the interview.
Thank you. Please tell us what the top 3 most pressing issues are in your city and how you plan to address them. And you have up to 5 minutes to respond.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my intro, housing is something that's going to be critically important. I think, it's not sexy, but sewer, sidewalks and streets are incredibly important, especially in Pacific Grove, for the walkability, for the sustainability of being able to bike and walk. We have to have better roads. We have to have better sidewalks. And so that is one thing that I would focus on. The housing element, as I said, that's a huge issue for us. We need 1,125 new dwellings, and we don't have a lot of community support. There are a lot of people in the town that don't want things to change. They like them just the way they are. In fact, I would say that some people would like to go back in time. But that's not the reality that we live in today. We can't go back. We've got to do a better job of prioritizing our budget so that we can put these things in place. I think, as I said, the biggest challenge is, how do you communicate out to the community to say, look, we need housing and here's why. And I think the council right now is not doing a very good job of explaining to people why it's important. Yeah, we need housing, but the fact of the matter is our small businesses have a hard time attracting employees because they're not going to drive an hour where they can afford to live to come here to work. And, the young families that are overpaying for rent or housing so that they can send their kids to our terrific schools. All of these things are interconnected in a way that I think we have to do a better job of explaining to the community why we need these things. Not just because the state mandates it, they are, but because it's the right thing to do. And I think that's going to be the key for me as I try and look through this. And then the other thing that I really want to focus on, the last piece of it, is community spaces. And I think what happened during COVID is a lot of people went inside themselves. They locked their doors. They didn't leave the house. They maybe left the channel on the same channel too long. And by not getting out into the community, I think you lose that sense of togetherness. And I think that's also has helped to stunt the growth of our town. And so for me, I think we need to update our parks. I think we need to update other pieces of our, recreation. We have a beautiful building in our town called Chautauqua Hall. It's over 130 years old, but it's dilapidated. The bathroom's back up. The kitchen needs to be redone. And it should be a showpiece to gather our community instead of a place that we really can't rent out because it's not in pristine condition. So we have a lot of issues. We also, although we may talk about this later, we have a city council that's not balanced, and it's moved far to the right. And so I think the other thing I'd like to do is to increase the balance within the council. So those would be my 3 things and a bonus.
Thank you. The next question is on housing. The California Democratic Platform supports, and I quote, allowing local communities to create strong tenant and affordability protections without the conflict of state law. What are your thoughts on this? And you have up to 3 minutes to respond.
Thank you. I think this is very similar to the conversation that we had about how do we get that message out to the community. This is not unlike that. I do support rent control, especially for our seniors. I mean, I worry about that a lot. I have a neighbor that lives next door to us. She's been in her apartment for 45 years, and she's one bad landlord away from being able to not being able to stay in her home. And so not only renters security for our young families, but also for our seniors. And I think sometimes they get left out of that conversation as well. So I do support rent control. I do support, even in our commercial spaces, I support a vacancy tax to try and encourage landowners to rent their spaces out. And I think as you look at South Lake Tahoe has got a ballot measure that's going to ask the voters if they should penalize second homeowners for not living in their home full time. And we have that situation here in our town. We have 27% of our housing is second or third homes. And so that takes an awful lot of inventory out of the way. And so I'm going to be watching very closely with the election in South Lake Tahoe to find out if they're able to figure out a way to get people to release some of their housing to be able to fill up, some more families that need houses in the area. The other thing that we have a lot of here is we have a lot of people who rent apartments. They come down from the Bay Area on weekends or a couple of times a month, and that takes away a lot of our housing. So I think we've got to do a better job of identifying what we can do. I think if this South Lake Tahoe goes through without any kind of a legal appeal, then I think they may be the benchmark for what we can do moving forward to encourage some of those homeowners to put their houses into inventory so that people can afford to live here. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is on climate change. What are the main threats from climate change in your city, and how will you address them? You have up to 3 minutes to respond.
So climate change is a very big issue. And as we talk about adding 1,125 units, they expect that our population is going to expand by about 20%. The challenge with that is having 20% more people here using our electricity, using our water and other natural resources. And so I think it's important that we prepare for that. One of the things that's come up here is a roundabout near the high school that is a very dangerous 5-way stop. It's more sustainable. It puts us in a plan to get to expand our infrastructure to prepare for these 20% more that are going to be here. The other thing that I would favor is to make sure that we're putting bike lanes and repairing our sidewalks, especially on the way to and from our schools. It's a huge issue here, and I think it needs to be addressed. That would also help the climate change issue. Getting people to walk and getting people to bike instead of getting people to use their car, I think is really important. And I think, you know, making sure that we connect the city of Pacific Grove through public transportation. And unfortunately, they've cut some routes into Pacific Grove, and it's left some of our seniors pretty vulnerable to not being able to get to doctor's appointments. So I think we've got to start to build our infrastructure to be more sustainable. We've got to put electric vehicles in play in our city vehicles. We need to power our buildings by solar or other sustainable resources. And I think we really have to identify those issues within our infrastructure that we can make more sustainable, because it's not going to get better. You can feel right now, I mean, our temperatures here in Pacific Grove are 10 degrees hotter than they were when I was a kid. And so you can see climate change coming. It's super serious. And another thing that we're really going to have to take to the people that can, to the community members that can help us to change some minds about how we do, how we move forward with sustainability, so that we can, really affect the climate action. But I think it's got to be infrastructure. It's got to be replacing our resources. And we've got to get community support. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question pertains to women and racial rights, or the significance of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Is there a gender and/or racial gap on your commissions, committees, and boards in your city? If so, how will you address this? And you have 3 minutes to respond.
That's a great question, and thank you for asking it, because it's a huge problem in our town. Our town, according to the 2020 census, is about 78% white. And you would think that that would mean that the racial problems or the gender problems are not problems. Well, unfortunately, when you're that imbalanced, it makes it even more highlighted of a problem. I think having a good strategy. I served on the board of the DEI for 2 years, and I can tell you that there's no lack of misogyny and racism within not only our city, but the peninsula in general. And so I think it's really important that we address this issue, because, our community is going to continue to get, it's going to continue to get more diverse, and we're going to have to do that. One of the things that I'd like to do is increase the numbers on our boards and commissions from 5 to 7 for those that are not already there, so that there's more work that can be spread out. And I think also when you increase the numbers, you get a little bit more diversity, or the opportunity for diversity. The other thing I'd like to see change in our town is that the boards and commissions are basically appointed by the mayor with a consent agenda item that really doesn't give the council many teeth. What I'd like to see is us go to all of those boards and commissions are appointed, but they're not on the consent agenda. You have to discuss every single one of them to make sure that you're not getting a bad actor in there, somebody that is not going to, we've had people apply for the DEI in Pacific Grove as an example, who don't believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. They don't believe in social and racial justice. And they say that in their application, and their goal is to get on the commission so that they can disband it. And so I think we need serious people We need strong council oversight to those appointments by the mayor. And then we've got to support those boards and commissions. And it's not just the DEI, it's the EDC and some of the other boards as well. But for the DEI particular, I commit that if I'm on the city council, I'm going to go to every one of those meetings in person. And I will be there to support them, even if I'm not the council liaison, because I think it's that important. And I think our town deserves to have that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. We will now end with your closing statement. What would you like our listeners and viewers to take away about you and your candidacy? And you have up to 1 minute.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate this. You know, the Democratic women of Monterey County has been pretty important to me. I see the need to have women banding together to help make change. And that's something that really, really speaks to me. And I think you do great work. And I want to continue that work. They call me a progressive in town as a pejorative. I wear it as a badge of honor. For me, it just means that I like progress because that's the root of the word. And that's what I'm hoping to bring to the town of Pacific Grove. Let's get us out of neutral and shift us into a forward gear so that we can, you know, we kind of joke that the slogan is we can have nice things. Well, we really can, but we have to plan for it. We have to talk to the community about it. And we have to make sure that as we're moving forward, that we do it in a way that's respectful to everybody. So I'm super excited, and I thank you all for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Margie, and thank you, Tina, for being here with us today. We're right on time. You answered everything, so thank you again, and best of luck in your candidacy. Thank you. Hi, I'm Lisa Berkeley, President of the Democratic Women of Monterey County. This is a pre-recorded interview with Paul Walkingstick, who is running for City Council in Pacific Grove. I'm here with my sister board member, Margie Kay, and Margie will be asking the questions and conducting the interview, and I'll be doing timekeeping and recording. And with that, I'd like to say welcome, Margie, and welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here. And we're going to begin with Paul Walkingstick introducing himself for 1 minute. Then I'll follow with 4 questions. We'll conclude with the candidate providing us with his closing remarks. Paul, please make your introductory remarks, and you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Margie. And thank you for having me and actually considering me for endorsement. I appreciate that greatly, more than words can express. My name is Paul Walkingstick. I'm running for City Council in Pacific Grove. I stand on a platform of environmental leadership, quality of life, transparency, specifically transparency in governance and public involvement. And it's not always listed, but I also have a very strong love for small business. Small businesses. I've started 3 of my own, one of them successfully. And I understand to a good degree how businesses succeed and fail. So although that's not always on my list, it's always in my heart. So being in Pacific Grove, we have a very strong and intimate bond with the environment. It determines our quality of life. It is the foundation upon which our tourism is based, much of our community life. It is why many of us moved here in the first place, or at least our parents or grandparents moved here in the first place. And it's why we stay.
Paul, thank you. Paul, thank you very much. You're over time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I will pay more attention. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. Please tell us what the top 3 most pressing issues are in your city and how you plan to address them. And you have up to 5 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Margie. Picking a top 3 is difficult. However, Our biggest one, our most pressing long term, is going to be climate adaptation. Secondarily, we have a pressure that's being put on the city to district out the city. The intention is good with the idea of representation of all people in our voting, and therefore translating into our representation in government. And lastly, kind of related to the first, is going to be water. Basically, how we bring it in, what we do with it once it's here, and how we recycle it, how we handle what we discharge, and how we handle what we recycle. So, with the issue of climate adaptation, we're 100% a peninsula. We're faced on three sides by the ocean. We are facing increasingly violent storms. We are going to be increasing greater flow of water, and more sporadic and more intense. And we're going to be facing sea level rise. All these things are unavoidable. And we are couched right on the ocean and surrounded by a marine sanctuary. So we're going to have to plan out a staged retreat from the ocean, while also, and that includes our infrastructure. We have water management facilities all along the coastline. We are going to have to also, in addition to managing our infrastructure and our people, our population retreating, we've also got habitat for our wildlife and flora and fauna all along the coastline. And that's something that hasn't been strongly addressed yet. We're going to have to figure out how to manage habitat, bringing that back as well. It's not enough to just build seawalls, have the ocean come in, wash away our beaches, and leave us without habitat. Our residents are not just human. And I think the people of Pacific Grove are very sensitive to that. Second of all, the DEI situation, or related situation, where we've got districting. This is an extremely difficult predicament, because the organization which is pushing for this is right in doing so. Districting works in virtually all cities. A lot of cities, most cities, are broken into socioeconomic districts, ethnic districts, different cultural districts. And it's right that each of those districts receives representation in government. In Pacific Grove, we've got I don't want to say a homogenous population, but we've got a geographically distributed population. So we've got a couple of areas where we will see maybe a lower income base, but and slight differences in ethnicity, but those areas are spread throughout Pacific Grove. If we district it by population, we start having, once again, we have problems with how to phrase this. If we cut it into multiple districts, each district would then need a representative. The more we cut it into districts, the less likely it is we get more than one representative put forth by that district. If we don't have someone put forward, then a person is appointed, which defeats the entire purpose of democracy in the first place. If we only have one person running unopposed, that again, that's a appointment by default. In our current situation, we've got the entire city, which 10,000 voters in 2.9 square miles, are able to vote on a large number of candidates. The first candidate traditionally gets quite a few votes. Second place gets slightly less than that. And third place gets far fewer. So we have an opportunity here where the third candidate is almost always minority view, a minority viewpoint that otherwise wouldn't get representation in the community. So as I said, if we have just one, if we cut into various districts, then it's going to be the popular viewpoint for that area, and the viewpoints of the different areas, when taken as a whole, are not radically different from each other. So anyway, What's my solution? Listen to the community. Always with everything DEI. Don't assume I know anything. Talk to the community, get feedback, digest it, understand it, and then act.
Thank you,
For me,
Paul. We've gone over.
ah,
Thank you. The next question is on housing. The California Democratic Platform supports, and I quote, allowing local communities to create strong tenant and affordability protections without the conflict of state law. What are your thoughts on this? And you have up to 3 minutes to respond.
could you please repeat the question so I can digest the whole thing in its entirety?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The California Democratic Platform supports, and I quote, allowing local communities to create strong tenant and affordability protections without the conflict of state law. What are your thoughts on this? And you have up to 3 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Margie. First of all, I am a huge believer and supporter of affordable housing, like as a rule. As a renter myself, tenant rights and considerations are directly affect me, and of course, I'm passionate about that. My feelings on stabilizing and managing rent prices is that it has to happen. Rent prices have been out of control. We are now looking at a situation where 50% or more of someone's income is going towards just rent, just rent, and that's no consideration to the rest of the cost of living. So we need to, and of course we got, I believe, 60% renters in the state of California. I believe that's consistent through my town. We need strong advocacy on the part of rentals and property owner rights, of course, are a consideration. However, those are also extremely protected in law, whereas the ability for renters to survive is not. So it requires our advocacy as part of the larger question. We've got a crisis in affordable housing. I know that some renters, like myself, choose to rent because it provides you a certain amount of latitude. In my case, it can actually bring down your cost of living. However, many want home ownership, and that's simply not a path that's available to most people. So in a previous community I lived in, Reno, Nevada, I worked with the city council there to rezone the area so that we could have ADUs and tiny living allowed in our community up there. And it created housing for hundreds of people, literally. And now we're starting to follow that path here. And I would like to see more attention paid to that. We've got a housing plan that calls for 1,100 units. I don't think we have the space for that, but we need to make the most concentrated effort we can to allow people home ownership as well as renters' rights.
Thank you. The next question is on climate change. What are the main threats from climate change in your city and how will you address them? And you have up to 3 minutes to respond.
Thank you. Our big challenges with climate change here is the sea level rise, encroachment of the ocean on our environment and on our community. Water management is a huge challenge for us, and then moving back or adapting our infrastructure. I spoke briefly before about the need to have a planned and phased retreat plan. That will include both creating the new infrastructure, as I was talking about, for moving our water treatment plants further back, moving all of our sewage further back, moving our water recycling further back from the ocean, and then ultimately moving back our roads and our homes. We're not going to be able to keep all of it. And that's a difficult fact to breach with everybody, but it needs to be managed. Expectations need to be eased into this new direction. And I think a strong phased plan will help people understand what the end goal is and how we're going to get there. As far as managing our water, we're getting a deluge of water. It's more intense. It's over a shorter period of time, and we have a tremendous amount of runoff into the bay. We have some water recycling projects in place right now. We have our purple pipe project, we call it, and it is successful so far, but it's fledgling. And we need to expand it, need to work on our water recycling better. Something that has missed everyone's radar so far as water recycling is we can't filter out the pesticides that are in the water. So something that's not being addressed yet that I will address is managing pesticides within city of Pacific Grove, because that gets into the water recycling. It doesn't get filtered out, and it will continue to get recycled back into the system. Being the butterfly town USA, we have a real problem with the impact of that on our ecosystem here can be very significant. And then lastly, with the infrastructure, it will be expensive, but we need electricity underground, at least our backbone. We are going to need our water system updated. We are going to need our sewer updated. We're going to need all of our water treatment updated. And lastly, we will also need our high-speed internet to be hardened as well. I would also like to have our infrastructure more accessible and actually have an organized plan rather than paving a street, digging it up, and then having to pave it again and then dig it up again. If we can address that, that's great. But first things first, we need to harden our community to climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question pertains to women and racial rights, or the significance of diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Yeah.
Is there a gender and/or racial gap on your commissions, committees, and boards in your city? If so, how will you address this? And you have up to 3 minutes to respond.
I'm very fortunate to live in a city where I believe that the community, the socioeconomics of it, ethnicities and genders are well represented. So I don't want to imply complacency on that point. It is not enough to be good right now. It's as important or more important to plan for the future and make sure that we have a system in which people continue to be represented in their government. So on the one hand, as I was speaking to earlier, we've got the districting question that's come up. I don't believe that an undistricted Pacific Grove is on the table for us. So the challenge then becomes addressing districting in the most equitable way possible, so that our people are represented. Secondarily on that, I'm a huge believer in outreach. I'm very social. I love talking to people, but more than that, I enjoy understanding people as much as I can. My desire on both gender and ethnic issues is to reach out to the community, my community, to community leaders, people who have better insight on many of the topics than I would, and would have a more personal connection or a firsthand view on much of the issues, and listen, digest, try to understand. And then work with communities and community leaders to act. And then, of course, the final thing after action is following up. What were the results of that? Were they successful? Are there things that are worth building on? And then, of course, continuing the dialogue. Issues are always going to come up. For another issue related to women's issues is human trafficking. And I'm becoming more aware of Monterey County's increasing, I don't want to say participation, but the fact that Monterey County is being used more for human trafficking now than it has been because of our proximity to highways, various other reasons, the fact that we're not looking for it, um, that is something that isn't getting attention in my community, and I desperately want to increase my own understanding and my community's understanding of it so that we can actually address it head on, and instead of missing it, or worse, pretending it's not a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now end with your closing statement. What would you like our listeners and viewers to take away about you and your candidacy? And you have up to 1 minute.
Thank you. I'm a pretty simple person. I don't know if it'll take a whole minute to explain me. Um, I'm local. I grew up in the area. I love the area and I love Pacific Grove's people, and the people are why I am doing this at all. I have no ego involved in this campaign whatsoever. I engaged in it at the behest of a number of friends. They finally broke me, and I finally decided to run. That being said, the community's issues I've already been involved in. I already volunteer on everything I possibly can in every way I can, mostly involved with the environment. Reforestation, tree planting, but also community events over at Museum of Natural Science. And so, excuse me, Museum of Natural History. What I want everyone to walk away with is this. I want to represent my community, not my own interests. And whether or not you decide to endorse me, I will always endorse you. Please come to me anytime for anything I can ever do for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Margie and Paul, for being with us. And I wish you both a beautiful rest of the day. Paul, may your candidacy go well, and I wish you all the
Thank
best.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.